a U.S.-led coalition conducted strikes on at least 36 targets in Yemen. The attacks hit sites under the control of Iran-backed Houthi rebels. The Pentagon says the Houthis will face further consequences if they continue to interfere with international trade in the Red Sea. A spokesman for the Houthis told NBC, quote, "The American aggression on Yemen will not affect us, and they will see that our military operations will increase instead of being stopped." Joining me now, former CIA Director John Brennan. He's an MSNBC senior national security and intelligence analyst and author of Undaunted: My Fight Against America's Enemies at Home and Abroad. Director Brennan, thank you very much for being here this evening. So tell us, why are the Houthis intent on attacking ships in the Red Sea? Is it solely to disrupt international trade?
Well, I think, Jonathan, it's a demonstration of solidarity with the Palestinian people and with Hamas. And as the fighting continues to go on in the Gaza Strip, the Houthis are going to continue to carry out these strikes against international shipping as a demonstration of their ability to lash back at those that are supporting Israel. And attacks against U.S. naval vessels, as well as others in the Red Sea, allows them to do that. The Houthis control basically all of the western and northern parts of Yemen. And so they own basically the Yemeni coast along the Red Sea. And they have formidable capabilities that they can use to lash out. So again, I think what prompted this latest round of attacks against shipping is a result of what is going on in the Gaza Strip.
So they say they're prepared for a long-term conflict with the United States. What would that look like?
Well, again, they have significant capabilities that have been enabled by Iranian support over the last several decades. The Houthis is a tribe in north of Yemen, but they've been able to take over much of Yemen as a result of internal strife there. And so they are able to continue to carry out these attacks. They were involved in basically a war with Saudi Arabia for a couple of years. And so I think, again, they're trying to demonstrate that they are not going to be cowed by U.S. military action. But I must say that the number of strikes that are taking place and the size of the munitions being used hopefully will degrade their ability to carry out these attacks against civilian shipping, merchant shipping in the Red Sea.
Might other Iran-backed militia groups be drawn into this fight?
Well, I think they already are throughout the region, which is one of the challenges the United States faces. What's going on in Syria, Iraq, against our forces in Jordan and other areas, I think is Iran trying to show that it has the ability to disrupt activities in the region by using these proxy forces that they have supplied and funded over the past many years. They've provided munitions, weapons, training, intelligence to these groups, and they can direct them as they see fit. And some of these groups, which have localized agendas, though, will listen very carefully to Iran. And in light of the continued conflict in Gaza, and Iran is a very strong supporter of Hamas as well. They have funded and supported Hamas for many years. Again, I think this is Iran's way of showing that it can, in fact, push back against the United States using these proxy forces.
You know, I asked this question of Congressman Clyburn in the last block. I asked this question of you, too, as well. Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska, Republican of Nebraska, was on with Ali Velshi in the last hour, and he said that the United States, the administration, should bring the fight to Tehran in retaliation for all of these things, for all of its sponsorship of terror in the region. Would that be the proper response for the United States?
I do not believe so. I heard that interview with Representative Bacon, and maybe he was just, using some catharsis here, because Iran clearly has been responsible for a lot of blood shed, including of American blood, over the past number of years. But what are we hoping to accomplish with an attack on Iran? Because it would open up a major, major war. Look what happened when we went into Iraq, when we went into Afghanistan. I do not believe we want to engage in a major conflict with Iran, a country of 90 million people. What are we hoping to accomplish there? If anything that's going to bring the Iranian people together is if the United States attacks Iran. That's why I think we can clearly send a message to Iran by attacking its forces, its special forces that are embedded with a lot of these proxy forces and militias throughout the region. I would argue against any type of direct confrontation with Iran, absent some type of direct Iranian attack against U.S. interests. But I don't believe that there is a lot of support for Representative Bacon's position.
Yeah, Director Brennan, U.S. officials say these strikes are not retaliation for the American deaths in Jordan. But I'm just wondering, is this a distinction without a difference? We've heard reported from Keir Simmons, who made that point, and also Admiral Stavridis made that point in the last block.
Well, I think what the Houthis have been doing against shipping in the Red Sea has been taking place for quite some time. And we have taken strikes against the Houthis prior to the death of our 3 service people in Jordan and the injury of over 50 others. So this has its own sort of rationale as far as what we're trying to do with the Houthis. But what the administration, the Biden administration right now is trying to do is to pursue multiple objectives simultaneously in the complex region of the Middle East, which is to try to keep our forces safe wherever they are in the Middle East, which requires the depriving of these Muslim groups the ability to carry out these lethal attacks. It is to help protect international shipping in the Persian Gulf and through the Bab el-Mandab, where a lot of international shipping goes through. It is an effort to try to bring a ceasefire in Gaza and a release of the Israeli hostages there. Keep pushing for the advancement of a 2-state solution in Palestine and Israel. Keep alive the prospect of a establishment of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. There are multiple objectives here, to include not having a broader war in the Middle East and engaging in a direct confrontation with Iran, which is one of the challenges the Biden administration has. But also, I think it is having a very effective strategy here of this delicate balancing among all of these different objectives in a way that addresses the threats that we face, but at the same time, not doing something reckless that is just going to further engulf this region in violence and flames.